In the hushed silence of the elite shooters club, the echo of a perfect shot still lingered in the air. Blake Radcliffe's smug smirk faded slightly as the target's bullseye disappeared behind a cloud of dust, the crowd erupting into thunderous applause. Dressed in designer gear, his confidence was as polished as his custom Remington. This was his kingdom, a world built on wealth, power, and skill where the uninvited stayed invisible, and the elite ruled without challenge. Blake loved to remind everyone, especially those beneath his radar, that here, money spoke and skill reigned supreme. But tonight that illusion was about to shatter. Across the room, Emma Miller hesitated at the entrance, clutching a worn leather purse. Her simple blue cardigan and plain jeans made her stand out like a dandelion in a lush rose garden. She was neither young enough to turn heads nor successful enough to command respect in this circle. Her eyes flicked nervously to the receptionist, who immediately looked away, as if Emma were a distraction rather than a guest. "Excuse me," Emma whispered, voice soft but steady. "I'd like to register for today's open practice." Her hand trembled slightly as she pulled out a crinkled envelope, her gift from someone who saw her worth, even if the club did not. The receptionist's gaze traveled from Emma's sensible shoes to her ponytail, dismissing her like a shadow. "Membership cards only," she replied curtly, then quickly busied herself with her computer. Emma took a deep breath. She reached into the envelope and produced a day pass. Her fingers brushed the edge of a folded photograph, faded but filled with memories. It was from a time when her world was different, when she and her husband Nathan shared a passion for precision and calm. Nathan, the man who had been her everything, her husband, her hero, her trainer. Blake Radcliffe, meanwhile, watched from a distance, his sharp eyes catching Emma's presence. At 42, with his 5 national titles and Olympic gold, he was the face of Remington's prestige. Wealth had carved his path, and arrogance had become his armor. Tonight he was on top of his game, until Emma's quiet entrance. He leaned toward his companions, voice loud enough to be overheard. "Well, well," he drawled, smirking. "Looks like someone took a wrong turn on the way to Walmart." His friends chuckled, their amusement like a dagger in Emma's back. She felt their eyes but kept her gaze downward, making her way to the basic range. Carefully, she placed her purse on a small shelf and unwrapped a cloth to reveal a modest Glock 19. It was serviceable, nothing like Blake's custom pieces, but familiar and steady in her hands. Blake's crew gathered, drawn by the sight of her. One of them, a young man, joked, $10 says she can't even hit the target," prompting a roar of laughter. Blake strode over, voice dripping with condescension. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said, his false politeness masking disdain. "Are you sure you're in the right place? This isn't a knitting circle." Emma looked up, meeting his eyes with a calm she didn't feel. "I'm just here to practice," she replied softly. Blake scoffed. "Practice, honey, this is a place for serious shooters. $10,000 says you can't hit the bullseye from 50 yards. His smirk widened. "Deal?" Emma's heart pounded. She knew the stakes. Blake was betting, mocking, daring her to prove herself. Her gaze flicked to her left hand, where a simple gold band encircled her finger, a gift from Nathan, a talisman of memories and promises. "All right," she said quietly, voice steady. "Deal." Blake's eyes flashed with triumph. "Excellent. Ladies and gentlemen, watch as our guest tries her luck." Emma took her stance, spine straight, shoulders relaxed, feet planted firmly. She drew a deep breath, feeling the ghost of Nathan's lessons whisper in her mind. Her fingertips found the grip, her eyes aligned the sights, and her trigger finger moved smoothly. The shot rang out, a perfect bullseye. The crowd hushed, then erupted into applause. Blake's smirk faltered. He snatched the target, inspecting it closely. "Beginner's luck," he muttered, trying to dismiss her. Rebecca Johnson, the club's manager, approached, eyes wide with admiration. "Miss Miller, that was remarkable." Emma placed her Glock down, her face unreadable. "Thank you." Blake's gaze sharpened. "Any chance you can do it again? I'll double the stakes, 50 grand, if you can hit 3 bullseyes at 50 yards. Miss even once and you admit you cheated and leave." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Emma's mind raced. What was this? A test? A trap? Her eyes flicked to Rebecca, who hesitated, then nodded. Deal, Emma said softly. Blake's grin was all teeth. Let's see what you've got. She moved to the 50-yard line, her heart pounding. Memories flooded her. Nathan's patient voice, his steady hands guiding hers. She remembered his words. Practice under pressure. Stay calm. Trust yourself. She took her shot. Centered. Perfect. The crowd gasped. Blake scoffed, but his eyes betrayed concern. He moved closer, eyes narrowing. One more, he challenged. 3 in a row, or you walk away. Emma's hands trembled slightly, but her mind was clear. She loaded her magazines, drew her breath, and fired again. Bullseye, then another, and finally the third, another perfect shot. The crowd erupted. Emma placed her weapon on the table, her face composed. Blake's face was taut with fury. He snatched the targets, inspecting them desperately. They're rigged, he hissed. This is impossible. Nobody shoots like this without cheating. Rebecca stepped forward, holding up her phone. Security footage confirms these shots are legitimate. Blake's jaw clenched. You're cheating, he spat, voice trembling. With rage, Emma's voice was calm but firm. If you're accusing me, maybe we should settle this privately. Blake misinterpreted her words, his ego inflamed. No, he thundered. Let's settle it here. 1 week from now, me versus you. 10 stations, different firearms. If you win, 50 grand goes to the Veterans Support Foundation. If I win, well, you'll leave town. Emma hesitated. The challenge was dangerous, reckless. But beneath her quiet exterior, a fire ignited. Something Nathan had always seen in her. The promise she made to him, the promise she'd kept through grief, and silence now demanded she step into the ring. Fine, she said softly. Same terms, and the money goes to the foundation. Blake's smile widened. You're on. And just so you know, your story's about to get a lot bigger. As the crowd dispersed, Rebecca approached Emma, concern etched on her face. Be careful, she warned. Blake Radcliffe doesn't lose gracefully. He's already digging into your past. Emma nodded, clutching Nathan's logbook, his records, his words, his legacy. She knew the next challenge wasn't just about shooting. It was about revealing the truth, about standing her ground against the privilege, the deception, and the arrogance, and she was ready. Because this wasn't just a game anymore. It was her fight for honor, for justice, and for the memory of a man who had taught her everything she knew. The night was just beginning. Emma's hands trembled slightly as she loaded her magazines, her mind racing. She knew Blake Radcliffe's game was about to turn deadly. Her focus sharpened. Every breath, every heartbeat, was a whisper of Nathan's, voice guiding her. The final shot was her only chance to turn the tide. She steadied her grip, took a deep breath, and squeezed the trigger. The gunfire rang out, and the target exploded with a perfect bullseye. The crowd gasped, then erupted into applause. Emma lowered her weapon slowly, her face calm but her heart pounding like a drum. Blake's eyes widened in disbelief. He snatched the target, inspecting it desperately, his face draining of color as he realized what had just happened. They're rigged, Blake hissed through clenched teeth. This is impossible. Nobody shoots like this without cheating. Rebecca Johnson, the club's manager, stepped forward, holding up her phone. Security footage confirms these shots are legitimate, she said firmly. Her voice carried authority, silencing Blake's frantic accusations. Blake's jaw clenched. You're cheating, he spat, voice trembling with rage. She's rigging the equipment. I want cameras checked, every connection examined. Emma's voice was steady, her eyes locking onto Blake's. If you're accusing me of cheating, maybe we should settle this privately. Or better yet, let's settle it publicly. A real challenge, 1 week from now. 10 stations, different firearms. If I win, $50,000 goes to the Veterans Support Foundation. If you win, I walk away and never come back. The silence that followed was thick with tension. Blake's mind spun. This wasn't part of his plan. He had thought she'd fold, crumble under the pressure, or run away at the first sign of trouble. Instead, she had just stepped into the fire. "Deal," Blake finally said, voice cold but tinged with a flicker of something darker. Fear? Respect? It was hard to tell. "Same stakes. And I'll make sure everyone knows you're the real deal." Emma nodded once, her expression unwavering. She knew the next challenge wouldn't just test her skill. It would threaten her very reputation, her safety, maybe even her life. As she moved away from the table, her heart still pounding, she caught sight of Michael Reeves watching from the back. His eyes were full of concern and something else. Pride? Fear? Whatever it was, Emma knew she had just stepped into a game far bigger than she had imagined. The crowd began to disperse, whispers swirling around her like a storm. Blake's entourage muttered among themselves, casting nervous glances at Emma. Blake's face was a mask of fury, but behind those eyes a storm was brewing. He was already making calls, already plotting his next move. Emma turned toward the exit, clutching Nathan's logbook, a tiny beacon of hope and strength. That logbook held the secrets of her husband's legendary skills, his distance calculations, his calm under pressure. It was her anchor now, her weapon against the storm. The night air hit her like a wave. She took a shaky breath, then another. Somewhere in the shadows, Blake was already calling his men, digging into her past, trying to find something, anything that could undo her. But Emma was ready. She had to be. Because this wasn't just about a shot or a contest. It was about honor, about truth, about proving that behind quiet strength there could be an unbreakable fire. She stepped onto the street, her mind clear. She knew Blake wouldn't give up easily. He would come at her with everything he had. But Emma had something he couldn't understand, something Nathan had always believed in. The power of calm, the strength of patience, and the unyielding will to stand her ground. This was her fight now, and she was going to win. Not with loud words or flashy moves, but with the steady, precise shot that carried her past the shadows into the light. Emma's final shot echoed through the silent crowd, a perfect, unwavering streak of light that split the night sky. When the dust settled, the crowd erupted, not in chaos but in stunned silence. She had done it. She had beaten Blake Radcliffe. The last bullet had hit dead center, shattering his record, his confidence, and perhaps even his pride. Blake's jaw clenched so tightly it looked like he was grinding his teeth. His face drained of color, and for a moment he simply stared at the target, unable to believe what he was seeing. The crowd's cheers slowly turned to whispers, then to gasps of disbelief. Emma, calm and composed, lowered her rifle gently, her hands trembling only slightly. "Impossible," Blake muttered under his breath, voice thick with disbelief. He snatched the target, scrutinizing the holes. 9 perfect bullseyes in a row at a distance no amateur could ever conquer. His eyes darted to the security footage on Rebecca's phone, then back to Emma. The evidence was irrefutable. She was real. She was the best. But Blake was not one to accept defeat gracefully. Rage bubbled beneath his polished exterior. His fingers curled into fists. His voice when he spoke was low, dangerous. "You cheated," he hissed, stepping forward. "This is rigged. You had to cheat. No one can do this without help. You're a fraud." Emma took a step back, her eyes unwavering. "If I cheated, then I'd have to be the worst liar in the world," she said softly. "Because I didn't, and I didn't need to cheat." The crowd grew silent again, the tension palpable. Blake's face twisted in fury, but before he could speak, Rebecca held up her phone. "We have the footage," she said, voice steady. "It shows no tampering. Emma's shots are legitimate. She's the real deal." Blake's shoulders sagged for a moment, then stiffened again. "This isn't over," he spat. "One more challenge, 1 week, 10 stations, different firearms. If she wins again, I'll admit she's better than me. But if I win—" Emma cut him off, her voice calm but firm. "If you win," she said, "I want my $50,000 to go to the Veteran Support Foundation, and I want the truth to come out about what you did to those guns tonight. Because I don't cheat." And I don't lie. A collective gasp swept through the crowd. Blake's eyes flashed with a dangerous light. His pride was wounded, and he hated being called out like this. Yet beneath the anger, something else flickered. Fear? Respect? It was hard to tell. Fine, he said finally, voice cold. Deal. 1 week, same stakes, and I'll make sure everyone knows exactly who you are. Emma Miller, the woman who beat the champion. Emma nodded. Good, because I'm not finished yet, and I'll be ready. She turned to leave, her heart pounding with adrenaline. She knew Blake wouldn't let this go easily. He was already calling his men, already plotting how to turn her victory into a disaster. But Emma had one thing Blake Radcliffe would never understand. She had the spirit of a soldier, the patience of a sniper, and the unshakable resolve to see this through. As she stepped into the night, the echoes of the crowd's whispers followed her. Somewhere in the shadows, Blake was making calls, trying to find a way to undo her, to silence her. But Emma knew the truth. This wasn't just about guns or competitions, it was about justice, about standing up for what was right. And she wasn't going to back down. Not now, not ever. Because in that moment she realized something profound. She had become more than just a woman with a gun. She had become a symbol that no amount of wealth, power, or privilege could silence. That sometimes the quietest voices carry the loudest truths. And that a single shot, when fired with purpose, could change everything. Emma's eyes flicked up to the starry sky, a faint smile touching her lips. She knew Blake would come for her. She knew the darkness was coming. But she also knew she had already won. Because real strength isn't measured by the weight of your wallet or the size of your gun. It's measured by the fire inside, by the courage to stand tall when everything else tries to knock you down. And Emma Miller was just getting started.